Okay, so this is part number three. Um, I have to record it, upload it, do it again. I was going to live stream this one, but I'll just keep rolling with it now. Getting back to what I was saying about the deliverance that's needed in our culture for single men and single women. We're not getting together because spiritually there's a disconnect between a man's spirit and a woman's spirit, right? The scripture says, how can two walk together unless they be in agreement? There has to be a spiritual agreement. And this is why in Christianity they talk about being equally yoked and not unequally yoked with another person's spirit. You know what I mean? So you might have a spirit of love and kindness and compassion, the spirit of God and things of that nature. But your partner may have a spirit of, other spiritual things that they're dealing with. You know what I mean? You have to have spiritual agreement if you're going to have lasting long term relationships. Booty calls are okay for a night, but after that booty call is over, you alone again. You know what I mean? And then what? You know what I mean? The loneliness is a very real drive that men and women both have. God gives us drives that pushes us when you're thirsty. That drive for water pushes us to go get a drink. Hunger pains, right? Those drives, the pains of being hungry, forces us to get off our butt and go get something to eat. These are drives that God gives you that moves you in certain directions. And loneliness is also one of those types of drives that God uses to move us in a direction of our opposite sex, that we need. And so getting back to what I was saying, our culture has sown some wicked things into our heads, beliefs, that have stopped us. One girl that I listen to a lot on her channel, she talks about limiting beliefs, right? There are beliefs that you have that may be limiting your ability to actually have a long lasting, significant relationship. You know what I mean? There's some beliefs you have about yourself. There's some beliefs you have about the other person that may be stopping you from forming significant long-term bonding and keeping those relationships. And so you have to start questioning, what are you believing? You know what I mean? That's stopping you from having a relationship. And so um, men and women both need to have their spirits delivered in order to actually be in a place of their soul that they actually can have um, a long-term meaningful relationship and find fulfillment in companionship with someone that their heart is longing for. And I hear the women crying out, you know what I mean, in their heart, longing for a man to be in their life. They're tired of going home to these stinky dogs and cats. You know what I mean? And I can't blame you. You was never meant to be with a dog or a cat. I was watching a video the other day where there was a woman who was laying on a bed and she was kissing a cat. I was like, ugh, you know what I mean? Like, can you talk about disgusting bestiality? You know what I mean? A woman was never created to kiss on an animal, to put your lips on an animal. You're a human being. You know what I mean? You're a woman who needs a man. You know what I mean? To kiss on. That those are the drives that God gives to a woman to be affectionate. If you're giving your affection to a cat or a dog, you know, yeah, you need to think about that. Both men and women, right? I see men with dogs. Like, you got these stinky dogs climbing up in your bed. You know what I mean, man? Like, what the f is wrong with you, bro? Like, you wasn't created to be sleeping with no dog. Rubbing on its belly. You know what I mean? You wasn't created to have that. But when you're lonely and you don't have that woman in your life, you might get a dog and smell that stink. You know what I mean? Uh, but men, our minds need to be delivered too. Like, this infatuation with the porn star. There's this dude over here. He's homeless too. You know what I mean? Older white man. Uh, heavier set, and he said he wanted a nine. And I was like, okay, bro, you're holding out for the nine. You know what I mean? It's about 60s or whatever, still holding out for the nine. That's what pornography does to a man's brain. Is we don't see value in the seven, the six, the five, the four, the three, the two, and the one. We don't see no value in them. We only see the nine. You know what I mean? And getting back to my Walmart experience, I saw those nines. You know what I mean? Real talk. You know, but still seeing the nines wasn't enough. Because the brother know. I know it's in my bank account, and I know it ain't what you as a woman are looking for. You know what I mean? And that's the reality. And I think that keeps a lot of men from pursuing a lot of women is because we know it's in our bank account. We know what you're thinking about. And so we don't approach. You know what I mean? Because the time I roll up in my car, you can be like, "Yep, pass, hard pass, swipe left." You know what I mean? You be swiping, and I was like, I ain't gonna waste my gas on that. I ain't got the money to be burning up this gas. And so, what was I saying? Women, your beliefs are stopping you from having a relationship with a man. You know, you have to we have a lot of people who want to work on their body. You know what I mean? Get good looking, and do the yoga thing, and look good in a pair of yoga pants. You know what I mean? Go to the gym and do your crunches. Do your squats and stuff like that. Get that booty, all nice and ripe. You know what I mean? That I got us guys like, but they spend all that energy and time and effort looking beautiful physically, and they spend no time and energy cultivating a beautiful spirit. You know what I mean? And you wonder why no man wants to keep you after he's done sleeping with you. It's like, yeah, she was rotten, bro. What I mean, her spirit was all types of nasty, and so he slept with you, dogged you out, and tossed you back, catch and release. You know what I mean? And that's why women, if you want a man, you know what I mean, you have to do the work. You have to attract a man to you physically, but you also have to attract him spiritually. That your spirits can be in agreement, that you can cultivate a meaningful relationship, because you're gonna be sleeping next to that dude. Do you actually enjoy that person's company, or is it, after the honeymoon phase is over, it's like, man, I don't even want to have sex with this dude because I don't even love his spirit inside of him. You have to have a beautiful spirit to keep the relationship going. You know, Women sometimes get seduced by the Bachelorette, by these romance movies and novels and things like that to fill their mind with fantasies. We got women out here chasing fantasies every single day. And once they get the fantasy, it's not enough. They got to go to the next fantasy, and it's always a chasing after a fantasy, and it leads to a spirit of not being content with what you have. You know what I mean? And so, um, this is why a brother like me has to be a love slave. I ain't got the money to afford big rings. You know what I mean? I heard some Chinese guy talking about what it's like to be in China. You know what I mean? They want you to have, houses, cars, good paying job, give presents and rings to the woman. All this stuff you got to give to her. You know what I mean? What she give you? Nothing. She don't give you nothing in return. That is a busted culture. When a woman gives you nothing and you give her everything, no, bro. Toss her back. Toss her back. She's trash. You know what I mean? She's the one that makes you sick and makes you want to vomit. Toss her back. And so, uh, you know, she's rotten at the end of the day. Rotten women with rotten spirits make you sick. You know what I mean? Men with rotten spirits make you sick. And you have to look past the superficial part of a man. his house, his cars, his clothes, his shoes. You know what I mean? Because a rotten spirit will make you sick every day of your life when you're with that person. You know what I mean? And so you have to look past the physical attraction and see the beauty of a woman's spirit. Because I can guarantee you this, she ain't always gonna look like a nine. There's gonna come a moment where she's gonna start dropping, right? After, 20s, she might be a nine. That might be the peak of her beauty. You know what I mean? Some people are late bloomers, you know what I mean? But that might be the peak of her beauty. And then it starts to degrade. Those women who work on their physical attraction and their appearance and their health, it may appreciate. But you have to invest not only in the superficial parts of attraction, but also the spiritual part of it. And I believe way too many people, us men specifically, we're fixated on that physical, those booties, that butt, those lips, and I'm guilty of that. You know what I mean? Like, I like a beautiful woman. I like a healthy woman. I like a woman that I could chase and run around with. You know what I mean? And skip on the beach and dance with. You know what I mean? A woman who's physically active. And so healthy. But even that, right? People get sick. They get diagnosis. That degrades their health. You know, physical ailments can degrade your health. An accident, right? You might have this beautiful model, but she get into an accident and lose her looks in an instant. What happens to the spirit inside of that person? You know what I mean? And so we need to focus more on cultivating spiritual beauty inside of us if you're ever going to attract a man and keep a man. You know what I mean? Because the woman that I want to wake up to every single morning is a woman with a beautiful spirit. You know, we can lose some weight. We can get on the treadmill. We can go hiking. You know what I mean? We can go dancing until you lose that. We can get on a diet. You know what I mean? So I wonder how many women with a spirit of a nine get passed over because of their physical appearance. So us men, we got some work to do in that area. We dismiss a lot of women that can, would bring us lifetimes of happiness and good things. The Bible talks about the wife of noble character being a woman who brings a man good all the days of his life. Is that the porn star? You know what I mean? Is that, is the